treats everything as an emergency and goes from there. And no, we have not even just in law, but in the Constitution, as interpreted by the Supreme Court, robust protections for searches. That includes just the search of your person when you're out and about, and certainly your home, which is a zone of privacy. So when they are using the jargon, administrative this, that, what they're really saying is we want to get around those protections. I'll say, without getting into too many weeds, that on the border and with regard to protecting the homeland, there are more robust powers. But the way that thing is written and the way that we've seen ICE now act towards American citizens, they're trying to not only bust down the door, but sort of bust through these loopholes and make this kind of a police state that will be used against American citizens, even though they've said after the fact, oh, we're only looking for the undocumented, and that's a mistake. That's not going to be good enough when these things are tested in court, Mika.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen situations where people are just point blank asked if they have their papers and to show them and other things. And John Howman, I'm curious if you've been tracking it all, the president's approval ratings as it pertains to not just ICE enforcement, but other big issues that where he seems to be pushing boundaries.
Well, I think, Mika, yes, I think, his approval rating on a number of issues that were key strengths of his in the 2024 election and in the first, say, 6 months of the first year of Trump 2.0 are all down. Particularly with key voting groups, right, where we're seeing this collapse among independents on a number of these issues. I think the most, in some ways, I don't want to just leave ICE and ICE enforcement behind, because immigration is really, one of the most, the issues that Trump has been proudest of and where his political strength has been for such a long time. And I've said this before, maybe on this show, if you go back to the moment when the ICE enforcement ramped up in Los Angeles, the National Guard was deployed, and eventually the Marines were also sent into LA. That is the moment where Donald Trump's numbers on immigration went into the net negative territory. They have been underwater since then. And as the ICE enforcement has ramped up, his numbers on immigration have gone down. He's in his worst position relative to immigration that he's been through his entire second term. And I don't think these are not coincidental. People are looking at what's going on and are kind of horrified by it. And to Ari's point a second ago, it's clear that the administration, that this memo that we just saw, this leak, this news break yesterday, I don't think it's the last one we're going to see. It's clear that behind the scenes, there are various maneuvers taking place that are of dubious constitutionality and dubious legality, where what they see is the Constitution and the law as something to be gotten around, not something to be complied with, not something to be tested even, but something where they're trying in the background to produce paper that will create a pretext or a CYA thing where, well, we wrote a memo on this 9 months ago. Everything we're doing is completely fine, as opposed to coming out and saying, this is what our new policy is, and allowing that to be both interrogated by Congress and tested in the courts at the outset. That's not the way these guys roll.
All right, so Ari, I want to now revert back to Jack Smith, because less than an hour from now, we're going to see his public hearing before the House Judiciary Committee. And this was something Smith's team wanted. Am I right? And what can we expect today?
Well, we can expect a public presentation version of what we know Jack Smith's evidence showed. He indicted Donald Trump twice. No former president had ever been indicted, and he testified in a closed-door setting where we have the released deposition. You reported and mentioned that it seemed like Congress was of two minds. Republicans wanted to bring him in. They've made some big threats and claims. But then initially, they didn't really want that deposition to get a lot of notice. They kind of buried it. And so what we're going to hear today, in his own words and voice, is what he says he found. And here's the fairest way we can say it. Everyone, Donald Trump included, is presumed innocent in a case. And this case never went to trial. So the former defendant, Donald Trump, is afforded all of those rights in our system. I would say he benefited mightily from some of them. And that's fine. On the other hand, under oath in a public setting, which Congress has requested, we are still going to hear what the arrayed evidence was against him. Why, unlike any other president ever, Donald Trump did interfere with the peaceful transfer of power. That's known. He did later free and embrace the people who violently attacked police that day. He did lie to the public about provably, knowably false claims about his loss. Whether any of those ever rose to a criminal level is, and this is why we're kind of in the other side of a Philip Roth novel today. This is the road not taken. That trial didn't happen. He is president again. We all know that. But this, in our system, I think, is a rather unusual, even though we're all a little inured, unusual moment where a sitting president is going to look up and see the former DOJ special employee who had previously prosecuted members of both parties, who's got a pretty sterling reputation, I can tell you, in legal circles, lay out why he did bring that case, a case that we know never went to trial.
Ari, he's been chomping at the bit to get out in public for the entire last year because he's seen his reputation impugned by Donald Trump.
Sure.
He's been trashed by Republicans. He's got a very good team around him who've been prepping him over the last few days and murderboarding him, getting ready for this. We have seen him in some public settings. When we have seen him, he's an impressive guy. And I'm asking you this question because it bedevils me. You are primarily a legal analyst, but also someone who knows a fair amount about politics. I cannot, for the life of me, understand why the President of the United States and why Republicans in Congress want this. There are many cases where I understand why Donald Trump trashes people who he thinks he can get away with that because they will not have a platform. They will not have a place to air their evidence or their character in public. But giving Jack Smith this platform seems to me to be a sign of either a kind of suicidal tendency or of a kind of blindness to how powerful this could be and how bad for them if he performs the way we expect him to perform from what we've seen so far and lays out the evidence that we think he has.
Yeah, he's a tough target, and we just went through numbers from on that chart, Venezuela to immigration to Epstein, where when we see majorities disapproving of Trump, that includes some people who are open to him or may have voted for him by definition. And so Jack Smith is not the person that you necessarily want to position yourself against, to your point. This is Congress, so it's always going to be a mixed question of politics and law. I know some people around Congress who say it's majority politics.
That's right.
So yeah, you got Republicans thinking politically maybe there's something they want to get out of this. I don't think it's short-term optics. I think what is sad, and it's just the world we're in, it may be that they're willing to trade what could be a bad news cycle, we'll see, for how badly they want to find a perjury trap.
Right.
Let's remember, the Republican Trump appointee chair of the Federal Reserve is being attacked right now on a case that the Supreme Court was skeptical of yesterday. That's built around what he said to Congress. Comey's case that fell apart, what he said to Congress. People should be honest with Congress. I think we would all like that. But what the courts have found, I say this carefully, what the courts have found repeatedly to be unchargeable, likely illegal selective prosecution has been built on what we lawyers call perjury traps, right? Yep. Which is I can ask you 10 fair questions and we could press you on the details. We've all seen some of that. Or I could sit with a team and try to come up with ways to trick you and foul you up. That's a perjury trap. It's not fair, and that may be what they want to do.
Right. And you make a mistake that then gets claimed as perjury later on because people sometimes their memory is flawed. I'll say, Mika, I have a little bit of a window into the prep on Jack Smith. He would have already been very focused on this question that Ari is raising on the perjury trap problem, even without the support of some of the people who are preparing him. They are very focused on this. They're not unaware of the possibility that the Republicans in Congress are trying to set him up. But you have a great set of insight always, instinctive and based on experience, in what Donald Trump's thinking. What do you think Donald Trump thinks he's going to get out of this? Because in the end, a lot of things that happen in our world, unfortunately, are driven by what Donald Trump personally thinks he's going to get out of something. Does he think he's a winner by putting Jack Smith on Capitol Hill?
Well, I would say that there are many who believe that President Trump is very interested in anything making headlines as long as it's not the Epstein files. Don't know that for sure. But that seems to be the one thing that they're really holding back on. I mean, they're breaking the law. We're well over a month that a law was passed that all the Epstein files have to be, by law, must be released. And crickets, like 1%, I don't know what the number is, of redacted pieces of paper were released. And you just have to wonder what is in there that somebody doesn't want seen by the world. And so, there's a lot of those who know the president well who believe that there are often actions that he takes in order to distract. I'm not sure putting Jack Smith up to publicly testify is a great option, But he would see it as a positive if it distracts from the Epstein files. And on the cases that Jack Smith took on, President Trump pretty much was able to tamp down and push back the charges that were being levied. I mean, in many different ways, including the judge in Florida. So it's unsure, and I'm curious.
You're basically saying you think that that further evidence that he incited an insurrection is better for him than what would come out if he had to lay it all on the table on the Epstein files.
Well, Hallman, what consequence has he seen?
I know. I'm just saying that's really quite a statement. I don't disagree with you, but it's really quite a statement. Yeah.
I mean, he pardoned all the January 6th criminals who were convicted of their acts.
Washington, D.C. This is the city where power lives. This is where decisions are made that shake the entire world. This is where people smile, shake hands, and hide knives behind their backs. And this is the same city that is slowly pushing one man out of its circle, Donald Trump. The man who believed this city would move on his signal, the man who thought fear was the greatest form of control. The man who believed that as long as people were scared of him, he would always stay in power. But Washington has its own rules. This city belongs to no one. It belongs only to power. And the moment your grip on power starts slipping, this city pretends it never knew you. Right now, Washington, D.C. is treating Trump like a toxic brand, something they can't wait to distance themselves from. And the craziest part, Trump can feel it. You can see it in his body language. You can hear it in his speeches. You can sense it in his decisions. He is more restless than before, using harsher words than before, trying harder than ever to show strength. Why? Because when people in Washington stop being scared of you and start thinking, what happens after him? How do we survive without him? That's when your power is already fading. And that is the most dangerous moment for any leader. Because when a leader feels his control slipping, he starts making the kind of moves he would never make in normal times. Reckless moves, extreme moves, all for one reason: to remind everyone I'm still the man you have to bow down to. But pause for a second. Let's be honest. Can you really trust headlines anymore? Most news today is filtered, polished, controlled. You're shown what media companies want you to see. You're not told what's happening behind the power game. That's why we built Pump Politics, to give you real stories, real context, no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter, News Straight to Your Inbox every day. The link is in the description. And if you simply want to support what we're doing, be part of a community that actually cares about the truth, all right? Back to the story, Gavin. Newsom, the governor of California. Why did he go to Washington? Not for a routine visit, not for a polite meeting. He went because he knew something was going to happen. He knew there would be tension between him and Donald Trump, and he was ready for it. Newsom knew Trump would mention him. He knew his name would come up. He knew this wasn't just politics. This was a power moment, a silent clash between two men who both understand that this fight is about the future Trump knows. Newsom is becoming a new face for Democrats. Newsom knows Trump is still a symbol for the Republican base. And when two people like that are in the same space, the air changes. Every word becomes a message. Every look becomes a signal. Every smile hides a strategy. Newsom did not go there to stay quiet. He went there to show something very important, that not everyone in Washington is afraid of Trump anymore. This is the real shift happening in D.C. People are no longer scared of him. They are preparing for life after him. And this is what Trump cannot tolerate. This is why his tone is getting sharper. This is why his moves are getting louder. This is why he keeps trying to prove he is still in control. But Washington is very patient. This city knows how to remove people quietly. No announcements, no drama, just a slow change in the environment until you realize you are no longer at the center of power. And that is exactly what is happening to Trump right now. This story is not just about politics. This is about psychology, the psychology of power. When someone spends years being feared, and suddenly that fear starts disappearing, they panic. They get louder, they get more aggressive because silence scares them. And right now, the silence in Washington is what scares Trump the most. Newsom's presence was not just a governor visiting D.C., it was a message, a very clear message. We are not afraid of you anymore. And in politics, those words are a direct threat to a powerful man. This game is far from over. In fact, it's just beginning. The chessboard in Washington is already set, The players are taking their positions, and everyone knows the next moves will decide the atmosphere of American politics. But one thing is clear. When power starts slipping, decisions become dangerous, and this is the moment the whole world is watching closely. Something is changing in Washington, and Trump can feel it, deeply, personally, intensely. And that feeling is making him more unpredictable than ever before. This is not just a news story. This is the sound of power slowly collapsing, a sound not everyone can hear yet, but very soon.